Now, as if Syria wasn't in a big enough mess, now we have significant issues as to who might have fired chemical weapons. Now, we said, the U.S. government, that we thought that there was a probability that it came from the Syrian government. But interestingly, the UN Commission member, Carla de Ponte, said, quote, "Our investigators have been in neighboring countries interviewing victims, doctors, and field hospitals. And according to their report of last week, which I have seen, there are strong concrete suspicions, but not yet incontrovertible proof of the use of sarin gas from the way the victims were treated." So yes, we have sarin gas, but, quote, "this was use on the part of the opposition, the rebels, not by the government authorities." Oops. So, and I partly said at the end of last week that the administration was stalling by saying, well, we don't know where it came from. We've got to investigate it more because it looked like the government had crossed the red line and they didn't want to take action. Now, it turns out, well, there's good reason to investigate further because it's apparently not clear. The UN backpedaled from that a little bit, and they did say the Independent International Commission of Inquiry on the Syrian Arab Republic wishes to clarify that it has not reached a conclusive findings as to the use of chemical weapons in Syria by any parties to the conflict. Okay, so in other words, it could be the government, it could be the rebel forces, but obviously if we don't know that it's the rebel forces, then we shouldn't go around invading countries. And we're not. Of course, John McCain doesn't agree. I don't have time for his video, but he says, let's go get him. Of course! All right, now, if Syria wasn't in a big enough mess where we have the chemical weapon issue, 70,000 people have already died, we're not entirely sure who used the chemical weapons, and you've got, of course, the rebel forces fighting against Bashar al-Assad's government, well, over the weekend, we had Israel do a massive bombing of Syria as well. Great, because things weren't confused enough. Well, Faisal al-Maqdad, he's a Syrian deputy foreign minister, he says, "When they attack, this is a declaration of war. This is not something that is new. We dealt with this on several occasions, and we retaliated the way we wanted, and the retaliation was always painful to Israel, and they will suffer again." What in the world is he talking about? When did Syria ever retaliate to Israel and cause Israel so much pain that they were like, oh, let's not mess with Syria? I don't recollect that. Now look, if he's obliquely referencing the fact that they helped Hezbollah and Israel got into a war with Hezbollah in 2006 and they fought to a draw and there was casualties on both sides, but that's why Israel bombed you in the first place. This is a rare case where I believe the right-wing government of Israel. They said, hey, listen, there was rockets there that we believe were coming from Iran and intended to go into Lebanon to help Hezbollah. We don't want to pick sides in the Syrian war. We don't want to get involved in the Syrian war, but we're not going to let those weapons go. Now look, 42 Syrian soldiers are dead, so Syria is within their rights to say that that was a declaration of war. They bombed the country. In fact, they've bombed it 3 different times now since this year began. So yeah, that's usually how you declare war on a country, by bombing them continually. Now I understand why Israel did it, but there could be consequences in that regard. But when the guy talks about like, oh, Israel knows not to mess with Syria, no, the evidence would be to the contrary. They know that in the past, when they messed with Syria, nothing really has happened in opposition. Now, Syrian information minister says this opens the door wide open for all possibilities. Now, that's what I'm worried about. Because I'm worried that Bashar al-Assad can then turn around and go, oh, yeah, those chemical weapons, oh, that was the rebels, and look, Israel just hit me. Oh, my God, I'm going to war against Israel. And when he says he's going to war against Israel, what's going to happen? People are going to rally around him. In Syria, that's not going to be an unpopular position. And then he might even have other Arabs rally around that cause. Israel has unfortunately given him an opening that if he steps through it. Now you say, but there's a downside. Syria will be devastated. Israel will, obviously, do significant damage. But Bashar al-Assad's a dictator. He's done significant damage. 70,000 people are dead. He doesn't care about his civilians. And it might be a smart strategic move for him, which would be terrible. And look at these clowns. Faisal al-Maqdad, Syrian deputy foreign minister, says, this is direct Israeli support for al-Qaeda and other forces fighting against Syria, and to undermine Syria and to weaken Syria. In other words, Israel is against us. We must be the good guys. But did you notice the beginning of that quote? Israel's trying to help al-Qaeda? That would be surprising. No, look, I know Israel began to some degree in the beginning some help of Hamas so that it would splinter the PLO, and oops, that backfired. But I would be very surprised if Israel was trying to help al-Qaeda inside Syria now. That would be a real turn of events. I don't think that's the direction they want to go. Israeli lawmaker Chachi Hanegbi said, "It's only against Hezbollah, not against the Syrian regime that we are fighting." But the Assad government says this is a declaration of war. Let's hope that they don't mean it, but I'm worried that Israel might have opened up a Pandora's box there that allows Assad maybe some hope that he could retain power in Syria by fighting against Israel. So we'll see how it turns out, obviously, but this is a giant mess for everyone involved.